This video experience is brought to you by 241 Inc. Productions. See it, hear it, experience it.
So now that all of your open water gear and equipment is cleaned up and put away for the winter, it's time to start focusing on ice fishing. And for me, that means going through a checklist to make sure everything, including all of my gear and equipment, are clean, prepared, and not broken. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the ice auger, because you kind of need this to put a hole in the ice. So what we're going to do is just prime it a couple times, turn the choke on, and run it quick. And the reason this started so smoothly is I've been using products like TruFuel, and it's a pre-mixed gas that has all of the additives that make sure my augers don't get gummed up over the summertime. The added bonus with TruFuel is that it's all pre-mixed and there's different types you can buy, and it's cleverly labeled, so if you're like my dad, you don't get it mixed up. The next big thing for your auger is your auger blades. So let's take a look. So for your blades, run your fingers from the back to front on each blade just to make sure there's no chips, ridges, or breaks. And if there are, just get them replaced or sharpened. And when we hit the ice, we always carry an extra set of blades because you never know if you're going to dull your blades up. And to protect your blades, get a good auger cover like this Cold Snap Ice Auger cover. Not only will your blades thank you, but your back will too. The next thing is you need a skimmer, and always have a couple of them. So when it comes to skimmers, just get the ones that work best for you. And remember, it is well worth having one or two extras. So now that your auger works and you have your skimmers ready, onto your fish catching devices. For me, I check all my rods from the blank itself, and then I check the guides to make sure there's no chips or breaks. And if there are any, either do a simple repair or go get them replaced or buy some new ones. And then for my reels, simply do a good clean check on them to make sure there's no dirt in there. Doesn't matter if there's going to be water there because it's going to get wet and freeze anyway. And then your line. For me, I always replace my line on my rod and reel every year because that's just what I like to do. But if you're using any braids, you can get a good 2 to 3 years out of them. And when it comes to mono and fluorocarbon, you've got to replace that every year because it will develop line memory and really screw up the lure action. Here in North Dakota, we're allowed 4 lines per person when we're on the ice. That means having some rod holders that either clip onto your bucket or lay on the ice makes everything a whole lot more manageable. So now, when it comes to all of my tip-ups, I simply make sure that the flag and the spring are still good, and then I do a quick visual inspection of the line and make sure that the reel spins. Another thing to check with the spool mechanism is to make sure there's a little bit of grease coming out the top because that's what keeps it from freezing up. And when it comes to line, it doesn't matter what brand you buy, but it matters on how tight the weave is because that's what holds out the water. And if you want your line just a bit more waterproof, simply run it over a candle a couple of times. And another little simple trick to add to your tip-ups is these little survey flags because it's a lot easier to see 2 flags instead of 1. Just like when you're putting your tackle boxes away, when you take them out, it's important to check for any rust that has ruined any of your hooks and lures, and then replace them. Also, make sure you got all of your stuff stocked up and you have all your favorite sizes and colors ready to go. Now, what's really cool about the ice fishing market is you've got all sorts of these little tackle boxes that can fit any style of fishing. So with this one, you have magnet system, and in this one, it's a silicone pad. And you can throw a handful of your favorite jigs and spoons in there. So when you're out hole hopping, you have a box in your pocket. And then when you need to make a necessary change to figure out what the fish want, it's as simple as opening your box. Don't need to run back to your sled that's 50 yards away. So when it comes to all of your graphs and flashers, just simply make sure the battery is good and charged. And when it comes to the actual unit, make sure the wires are hooked up because we all know that stuff breaks just sitting around. And now for your winter clothing, try it on and make sure it's all in one piece. You know, like my boot from last year, it's got a hole in it, so that's not going to keep me very warm or dry. Next, just make sure everything fits. Because according to Mom, clothes tend to shrink over the summer. And speaking of safety, There's a lot of safety tools like these ice picks that are out there, and a lot of people don't think they need them until they actually do. But the most important safety tool of all is making wise decisions, having at least 50 feet of rope, and going out with a buddy who knows how to use them. Now that we have everything checked over and in the sled, the last thing to consider is if you're going to be on the ice after dark, how are you going to light up your area? What we did is we bought a whole bunch of these simple LED lanterns. You can get a whole bunch of them for pretty cheap. Next, pick up a couple headlamps. You don't need to spend a ton of money on them, but get a couple good quality ones. And now that everything's in the sled and ready to go, all we have to do is wait for first ice.